Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mehnaz Afridi. I am a Holocaust educator and I teach Islam at Manhattan College. I also direct the Holocaust Genocide and Interfaith Education Center at Manhattan College. I'm really pleased today for introducing and also being the moderator for today's wonderful panel with four really amazing Muslim sisters of mine. And the panel is called Muslim Women Speak, Our Journey to Auschwitz, Birkenau, Can Holocaust Education Stop Antisemitism? And it's sponsored by the American Muslim Multi-Faith Women Empowerment Council, which is headed by Anila Ali. I just wanted to say a few words before we begin. I believe that Holocaust education is essential. I've been a director at the center here at Manhattan College for 13 years. I've seen amazing transformations by students of all faiths. I'm at a Catholic college. I also have a large, blossoming, wonderful Muslim American students that take my classes, as well as classes on Islam. We do lots of programming. We are the Holocaust Genocide and Interfaith Education. So we teach Holocaust, we have Kristallnacht, we have Holocaust Remembrance Day, and we also deal with genocides. For example, this semester we did work on the Rohingya Muslims, as well as the Uyghurs in China. And then through a lot of this collaborative work with Jews, Christians, Muslims, and others, we have done amazing interfaith community work, even after October 7th. So I'm pleased to say that our campus has been very open. We've had great and challenging conversations. So first, what we'd like to do is have Soraya Dean, who is an award-winning Muslim feminist lawyer. She is an international activist, community organizer, and public speaker. She's also the co-chair of the Women's Working Group of the International Religious Freedom Roundtable in DC, and founder of the Muslim Women Speakers. The women work in the areas of addressing religious extremism, anti-Semitism, gender equality, and public leadership. She's also a board member of AMMWEC. So Soraya will share a PowerPoint, and how it will go is I'll ask 3 questions basically for the four participants, and then we will close for questions if anyone has them. And please mute yourself if you are attending right now. Thank you. Thanks, Soraya.
Thank you, Mehnaz. I want to share a short PowerPoint just to illustrate the fact that we didn't just arrive at having this program. Where's the slides? We had to do a lot of work. We did a lot of soul searching. We did a lot of witnessing before we thought we should share with the world what is needed to be shared. First, why did we go on this trip? We partner with an organization called Sharaka. That is an organization that is shaping a new Middle East, is building dialogue and understanding and cooperation and friendships within the Middle East. And we of course, we went to the Inter March of the Living in May of this year. And from there, we went to Berlin. In Berlin, our first stop was at the Memorial to the Murdered Jews. I'm not sure how many of you have been there, but that's a must-see. There are 2,711 concrete slabs on 4.7 acres of land. And unattached is an underground, is a place of information which holds the names of 3 million Jews. And this monument was built in 2003. From there, we went to the U.S. Embassy in Berlin. It was a great meeting, a powerful one, and we stood there in solidarity and in exploring how we could take this message forward. And there we met with the U.S. Embassy Deputy Chief of Mission, Mr. Clark Price, and his staff. And that then later took us the next day to the German Parliament, the Bundestag, where we talked about the Abraham Accords. We met the president of the Abraham Accords Institute. There he is standing with us. And this is a powerful way to rethink Arab-Israeli conflict. and this institute was set up in 2003. That took us then, of course, this is the rooftop of the Berlin Bundestag, the parliament. 45 of us went. And there we also, thereafter, we went to the Claims Conference. It's an organization where, to this date, the Holocaust survivors are remembered, and reparations and atonement is made in a big way by the German parliament. Then from there, we met Dr. Felix Klein, who is the Commissioner for Jewish Life and Anti-Semitism in Berlin. And we got him to pledge that he'll work with us Muslim women, because women's voices are lacking. Then we went to Auschwitz, Birkenau. Here we took that long walk, and we are at the entrance. And the first sight that greets us is the railroads in which 6 millions of Jews were transported into to be exterminated. And we went deep inside, saw the camps where people lived, and the conditions in which they survived in those camps. And then here I am looking for my friend Rabbi's grandparents' names. Here we saw names, every name of those who perished in the Holocaust. It is preserved in that place. And then here's we getting ready for the march. And here with us on the extreme right, second from the right, then next to Farhana, my friend is an Arab Israeli who traveled all the way from Israel. And here we stand before we march, and the sign says, "Work will set you free." It was a terrible, inhuman conditions in which the Jewish Holocaust victims lived. They had to work. About 20 to 30,000 of them left this particular entrance every day to go to work and to come back. 12 to 24 hours of work. Yes. And thereafter, yes, here's our four of us reflecting. And we had in Krakow, we went to the Jewish Community Center, met with the rabbi. Yes, here's us, small Jewish community. And with us in the delegation were two imams. On the right is Imam Chaglami from France. And then on the left is an imam from New Jersey, one of Bangladeshi origin and one of Arab origin. And I'm wondering what they are thinking as you and I will continue to think after today. And then we, the four of us who went on the trip, we prayed for ourselves, prayed for the Muslims, prayed for the Gazans, prayed for the Jewish people, prayed for the victim, the survivors, and prayed for every one of us for a better, peaceful world. And then, of course, as our souls saw the possibility, that's why we went. And sometimes, and often these days, we walk in courage, though alone sometimes, but we will continue to walk. Thank you. And of course, we can't forget Elie Wiesel's reminder, "Thou shalt not stand idly by." He was one of the Holocaust survivors and yes, never again. Thank you. Thank you, Javed. He's our intern from GW who put this PowerPoint together. I'm so grateful. We are so grateful to him. And back to you, Manaz.
Yeah, thank you so much, Soraya. That's I've led people to Auschwitz, and I've also obviously teach a lot about Auschwitz and Birkenau, and it's an extremely profound experience. And I think the first question I have, and I'm going to start with Anila, is basically, why did you want to go on this trip? What compelled you to just make this trip with Chikara? And also, I want to introduce Anila, who is a Muslim American faith leader who's been fighting hate and anti-Semitism since 9/11. In 2011, she founded AMMWEC, which stands for American Muslim Multi-Faith Women Empowerment Council. It's an organization that's committed to empowering women and bringing together and building multi-faith partnerships. She is a fierce fighter of anti-Semitism and built bridges with interfaith community and law enforcement to counter extremism and anti-Semitism. She's a proponent of the Abraham Accords, She has led tours of Muslims from Pakistan, including government officials, to pursue multi-diplomacy to Israel. She also chairs international religious freedom roundtables in Pakistan. And Anila is fierce. I mean, she was wonderful. I hadn't met her before, but we had communicated, and she came all the way to New York City and attended the Uyghur conference. And she was an amazing participant, and so was Suraya Dean. And I'm really, really grateful for that. It was very hard for me to find partners for the Uyghur conference, especially Muslims, which makes me very sad because it is a real atrocity going on right now in Xinjiang in China. So without further ado, Anila, please.
Hello, everyone. Menaz, you yourself have worked so hard, and it's the convergence of all our advocacy and our beliefs that is going to change the world. Yesterday we were alone. Today there's so many of us, and we're growing. So Alhamdulillah, I think our voices are picking up. After 9/11, being a public school teacher, my career in a US public school began after 9/11. So you can imagine, teaching seventh grade with Islam as a whole chapter on Islam. I didn't know what to say. And my mentor was Jewish, and she knew exactly what I was going through. And she reached out to me and she said, "Listen, Anila, what's happening?" A lot of our kids were being called terrorists. My students were questioning me, "Miss Ali, what's your religion like? Where are you from? And are you terrorists?" These are innocent kids. You can teach them what you will. And a lot of teachers didn't have any idea of how to deal with this new reality post 9/11 classroom. And we said, as educators, what can we do? So I looked at the Holocaust curriculum and I said, who would better understand hate and the roots of hate and how bullying, biases, stereotyping, how they happen and how they hurt. They hurt us everywhere. And they come in different manifestations. They come in different mutations. And I sat down with my interfaith colleagues, my Jewish mentor and my Christian teacher, and we devised a curriculum in which, there was a springboard for discussion. We talked about the World War. We talked about hate was already present and how it was showing its ugly face in different places. And we learned, the Holocaust myself, because I had never heard the word Holocaust. I grew up in England, Pakistan. I'd never heard anti-Semitism because we didn't go there. For me, it was a learning. But then I used that curriculum to use it as a springboard for discussion in a classroom where, our kids were being affected, relationships were being affected, and Muslims were being bullied. Our kids were being bullied. And I stood there with my Jewish and Christian colleagues. What better way to teach children the truth about what America is, what America has to offer, and how hate starts. Hate starts when you don't know enough. Hate starts when you have the fear of the other. So learning that, using the Holocaust for 15, 16 years in a classroom, my students went back every year and said, "Miss Ali, the best part of your curriculum was like when you brought in the Holocaust survivor." Each time the Holocaust survivor came, my dear friend, Dr. Pariser, he would first, he was like, "Anila, you're Muslim, and what are you doing for your kids?" And then he started telling me, "Anila, what are you doing for your kids in colleges? What are you doing for kids in college?" I said, "I'm in school, I'm a middle school teacher." He said, "No, go to the colleges." And God knows that people who have survived this extent of hatred, they know what is happening. They can tell, they can see these indicators coming back. And Jack knew that. He was a Holocaust survivor. He hid in a 10 by 12 hole for 6 months in those forests that we were walking. You saw the pictures of those. For me to be at Auschwitz was like all these years that I had been reading these stories and telling my students what was happening, and Jack Pariser was coming. I imagined my dear friend Jack and his family hiding in that hole, 4 people, only getting out to do nature's call. and somebody knew, one person, like among the righteous, would come and give them food. Imagine that this was the degradation of humanity that had happened. Why? Because the Nazis didn't like the religion of the Jews, the face and the color, the ethnicity of the Jewish people. Do you think that could happen again? Of course it can happen again. And we were becoming more oblivious of that reality. Yes, we saw that emerge again in Bosnia, Rwanda, but yet we forget the kind of tragedy that happened during that time, the Holocaust, and to hear the horrors of it and to see them. It was so moving for me to see that, I had always heard that, the Nazis, they would pick out the gold teeth of the Jewish people and they would pull it out, and they would sell it. They would keep their jewelry, they would keep everything and take it away from them. All those horrors I saw for myself. And then what that hurt me the most, Mehnaz, was seeing the hair of women, of men that was cut and made into carpet. So you could, the Nazis were walking on that carpet and they were selling. It was a industry of hate. It was just not hate. And that is what I wanted to see I believe in bearing witness. Once I've seen it, nobody can challenge what I've seen. And I know in my heart that I have seen it. I can go back and fight for more. And, that's what happened when we were there and we saw all these images. We came back, we had secondary trauma, just like we did on October 7th when we went to meet the families, the families whose women were gang raped. We came back, we had secondary trauma. We were holding each other, literally saying, we are there for each other. We are going to do this together. I think it's very important to see and live history, to go there and learn a lesson. It teaches you everything. As you said, religious freedom work in Pakistan. Many of the Pakistanis who come here, the Bangladeshis, Indian Muslims, and people from all over the world, Muslims from all over the world, they go to the US Holocaust Memorial. There are men, my allies, imams from Pakistan and India and Bangladesh and all these countries. I see tears in their eyes when they go to the Holocaust Museum. And yes, we pray. We pray that this should never happen to anybody. These are our own people.
Yeah, Anila, that's a beautiful segue into asking the next participant, Farhana. You also went to Auschwitz and you did the trip. And Farhana is a Bangladeshi-born American Muslim. She's an interpreter, family partner, community leader, a support for children and families, as well as an advocate for social and women's rights, executive director of New England Bangladeshi American Foundation, advisory board member for the American Muslim Multi-Faith Women Empowerment Council. So let's hear your thoughts.
Growing up in the USA, I have read a lot of books on Holocaust. So when this opportunity came to actually experience it, the history or the place, as we were working on extremism and anti-Semitism with Anila last 2 years, so I decided to go. And with all the turmoil that is happening towards one ethnic group around the world, it's a strong form of discrimination. And I felt knowing more, understanding more is the only way we could separate all the section of what is going on. And I work as a family partner, and I know what happens in this situation and what trauma people goes through, what they feel, what they endure. And my experience to bring that and to share that we could not let anything like that to happen again. And last year I was in New Orleans visiting World War II Museum. And what struck me there was a gentleman, he must have been a veteran. He was with his grandson. And as I was walking around, he kneeled down in front of his grandson and said, "You see, we could never let this happen again." And it struck with me. I wish more of the people like him would have advocated that what hate can do, how it can spread, and what it could be distraction of humanity. And the more we understand, more we learn, that's the only way we can overcome the differences we feel. Thank you, Manaz.
Thank you so much, Farhana. I'd like to just reiterate that we'll have questions at the end. So if you can lower your hands until the very end, there's not a big group. So I'm hoping we can have a nice, robust conversation. I'd like to turn to Zeba Zubair. She's a Bangladeshi American Muslim. She's a peacemaker, civil rights activist, human rights consultant, and board member also of the American Muslim Multi-Faith Women Empowerment Council. So welcome, and please share your thoughts with us.
Thank you, Mehnaz. The Holocaust education started in childhood. My father, he was an educator in Dhaka University. So he has a bookshelf and a bookshelf of all the English books. So 9 and 10 years old girl, when is nobody around in the drawing room, you know, mom is maybe sleeping, my sister, brothers are away, I will go to that book almirah and pick up those red books, 12 red books, small size. And that was written by Winston Churchill, British Prime Minister. So there was like the English, I couldn't read that much proper English, but I would see those pictures. Few seconds, few minutes, I'll look at it and I'll put it back. Then I did it like until teenager. Then I find out these are actually Holocaust, war, Second World War. But then I forget about Holocaust. Obviously, we watch a lot of documentary, like, you know, different documentary and also movies. Then I moved to USA and I met a wonderful Jewish community here, even though that time who was Jewish, who is Buddhist, who is Christian is not, this is like a 26, 27 years ago. Then I went to UC Irvine. I know about Holocaust there. Then fast forward, as the young kids, we never, upbringing was not hate, no hate there, no Jewish hate, no Hindu hate, nothing. But first time, the reason why, fast forward, I went this time to the trip for Holocaust education. If October 7, after October 7, the amount of anti-Semitism rising in USA, the world largest democracy, is fearful. So I thought like that Holocaust, the Jewish hate is over, the war, those kind of hate is over, but actually is not. So, to remember what happened and share that experience with the community, our own community and foreign community, to give the voice, not to remember, combat anti-Semitism together, and this thing to never happen against anybody. So that's why I decided to go, even though it is kind of scary for me, but I challenge my fear to, we all together, we went there and kite together, and we will all stand together to combat any kind of hate and combat any anti-Semitism. Thank you, Mehnaz.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. Soraya, I've already introduced you, so we want to reflect a little bit, and then I'll move on to the next question.
Okay. Thank you, Mehnaz. I think, you know, when I was a little girl, I read about Anne Frank. While she and her family were hiding in an attic in Amsterdam during the period of the Nazi occupation, before she was discovered and sent to the Auschwitz death camp, she wrote in her diary, she said, "Despite everything, I believe that people are really good at heart." So I think one of the reasons I went was to really restore that harmony in the world, I think it is our sacred duty. Because we live in dangerous times. And if you remember in 2005, Iranian President Ahmadinejad said that Holocaust is a myth. And it did prompt a lot of condemnation, but he made a dent in the way the people looked at that part of the history. And 2007, we also know he came to Colombia and made a similar statement. So I have myself gone through a lot of marginalization for the many stands I have taken. And it is only people who have really stood with me, who have helped me to dispel these myths and stories. And I, in that community is a lot of Jewish friends. And I thought it is up to me as a Muslim woman today, if we are going to combat anti-Semitism, we need to educate ourselves on the Holocaust, the suffering, because when we see suffering, we are all human beings. There is a point in our heart that we open. And it is that hope that I have after I visited the Holocaust, the concentration camps, that we will one day be able to share these stories and make people see, humanize the struggles of the Jewish people, 6 million of them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maria. Please mute yourself if you're not speaking. Thank you, I appreciate it. So I wanted to turn back to Anila. Anila, you mentioned that you're talking about Holocaust education, you teach the Holocaust. You know, I'm looking for, what's the little piece that you took away from this trip? Whether it was an artifact, an experience, something you didn't know, something that you can use as a tool to educate, you know, people. I mean, I try to educate mostly Muslims about the Holocaust and Jewish history, because that I think is really important, or have them experience, you know, going into a synagogue or a service. Like you said, experience and knowledge go hand in hand. So if you can reflect on that for a couple of minutes, it'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Manaz. What I think I wanted to see, like, you're an educator, I'm an educator. A lot of my students used to, you know, look at the school shootings that we had. And I said, how do they begin? A lot of times they begin because someone is isolated. Nobody's hearing this young person who's being bullied at school. And I said, how does hate begin? What makes people hate people so much that they want to kill an entire race? And that always boggled me, because I was a Pakistani, the first generation born in Pakistan. My parents and grandparents were all alive. They had built Pakistan, left everything in India. Yet I was never told, you know, Hindus are bad or Indians are bad. So I said, what's changed? Why am I different? And, you know, why are we often told that Jews and Christians are not, you know, you can't sit with them, you can't eat with them? And I said, why? Where's that hate coming from? And look at a classroom. Where does it begin? Well, in a classroom, students can identify that it begins with, you know, he's a nerd, you know, and then you're too smart, you're too thin, you're too fat. And from there, we were able to trace the poison, which we all know today is hate. And how do we educate ourselves to use better words, to exclude the word hate? And in that, Mehnaz, there's a whole lot of education that we can do. And for me, that was like, every time my students said, Miss Ali, but we're one, what can we do? I said, no, it's that effect in a pond, and then you will be many. You know, one drop makes an ocean. And I would tell them, never think that you're alone, because I used to think that. I grew up in England being called Paki all the time, being beaten up, you know. And who stood up for me? It was a Hindu girl. It was a Jewish guy. It was a Iranian girl. Why did they stand up for me? Did they know what hate was all about? Most likely. And so can we be bystanders as 9/11 is happening and we have people standing with us? Do we have a responsibility, like Soraya was saying, to speak up for the other? We do. And inherently, as a Muslim, I feel that we all have a responsibility to pass on that education. And that's why, in every religion, education is sacred. Pass it on, pass it on. That's the best thing you can do. For me, this trip was a reminder that, Anila, you have to continue your quest for education, how to get hate out of curriculums all over the world, and including South Asian countries, which is what I want to do now more than ever.
Thank you, Anila. We were losing you for a bit. Just check your connection. Farhana, we wanted to hear from you in terms of what was your takeaway from this trip? What's the one thing you can say, wow, I couldn't, or this is something I can take back to my community and educate them about it?
My takeaway was that one thing was like the hate is fear of the unknown. And also it was really, how would I portray it? Like the horrifying horror experience that unfolded before me, and listening and being in that place, grasping what had taken place. And what made me think that it wasn't just a beginning if it wasn't stopped. It started with Jewish, and also it was targeted to elderlies and disabled who could no longer serve the community. And that is the information I wasn't aware of. And that made me to think that it was a beginning and it wouldn't have ended there. Hate is it's like a wildfire. It's like when it spreads, you feel more fueled by it. And it spreads more than love and peace, as we can see. And that's something I brought in, that I would do my best to, as a community leader and community support, to let people, guide them and let people know there is no way you can build peace on a foundation of hate. So we have to kind of gear ourselves that there's always going to be a problem, and only way we can resolve anything is trying to find a solution rather than fueling more hate to the issue.
Thank you, Farhana. Zebunisa, you are, as you say, a civil rights activist, and you talk to your community a lot as well. What can you say to them after this trip to Auschwitz?
We all got very emotional after we went to Auschwitz. And last day we attended March of Living. We met all kind of people from all over the world. So end of the day, we had a group session, soul searching. And I am actually very much emotional person. I broke down. One thing I understand how precious is life. Like, God give us like a life, enjoy it. And life is very short. We don't need to hate each other. Through love, we can accomplish so many things. And also, like, since October 7, I am seeing another world. This world we didn't grow up with. Like, look at all the young children in our colleges. These are all high, like, Ivy League colleges. Merit, brilliant students come here. I also went to college over here, but that time the students were not like this. Who teach all the hate, all these children? And these children is going to be lead the world one day. We also went to Wanzi Palace. They are all the, the bureaucrats. They make the final solution. So this kind of question, hate is a disease and also it is very contagious. So we have to teach the children, especially from school, family, community leaders, coaches, to teach them that hate is wrong. Rather, we love, and through love, We can change so many difficult things. Let's sit down, have dialogue, know about other culture. Look, we are living now as a globalization, multicultural society. We have to work. You don't know who is going to be your neighbor, who is going to be your colleague, who is going to be your boss, whom you're going to fall in love with. So these things are matter. So you have to know tolerance, non-violence, compassion. So we have to teach children from very young age, as well as our older. The love is the best option. There is no place of hate.
Thank you, Vanessa. That is very passionate, emotional. Soraya, you do a lot of work with religious extremism. I mean, I do too. And so I want to ask you the same question, but in terms of what tools you would use to get people from your experience and in Auschwitz in terms of getting people to the table, right? There's a lot of challenges right now just to getting different groups to have this conversation that is about meaning and about exchange and challenge. But how do we bring this experience to actually more Muslims is my question always.
I know. Thank you, Mehnaz. It's so nice you asked me this question. This morning, I was speaking at the International Religious Freedom Roundtable in DC. And what I said was that we have to end this facile generalization of violence and extremism. We must go deep to the root causes, the sources, the actors, the enablers, and name those who are silent. And for me as a Muslim woman, I said very clearly, and I repeat here, we can be different kinds of Muslims. We can be Reform Muslims, conservative Muslims, Orthodox, any kind of Muslims. But when it comes to issues that fall short of internationally agreed standards of equality, democracy, gender justice, human rights, we must speak up in unison. And that is very missing in our community. And I approach this topic as a grassroots activist. There is a story we always say, an activist is somebody who comes to the river, she sees the river is dirty, she removes the shoes, cleans the river, and then goes on. So there is a sense of urgency to what we are talking, Mehnaz. What Hitler did was legal. And it all began, as Zeba reminded us, at the Wannsee Conference. 15 men came together, and they didn't even debate. They decided what they were going to do. That's my understanding. So the Holocaust began with words, incitement. And today, if you look at what is happening in the United States and the world over, we are at a risk of forgetting what we need to remember. And Dr. King categorically reminds us that, in his activism, what he said was social justice must advance nonviolence and love. And he said, I stick with love. Hate is too much of a burden to bear. So my big takeaway is that I hope that I can, in my small way, share this message and bring connection, bring compassion and empathy. One of my teachers tells me every morning, Soraya, remember one thing, you're responsible for everything. So in my own way, my whole takeaway is I will teach something to somebody, I'll share this message.
Thank you so much, Surya. I mean, I have just one more question for our participants, and then I will open it up for questions. But one of, the goals that I think the participants have, and I share with them very deeply and profoundly, is how do we have dialogue, Jews and Muslims? How does this education help? And how do we basically educate Muslims about not just the history of Holocaust? I mean, sometimes, it's not enough to look at that lens, but Jewish history and Jewish-Muslim relations, way before even like the 1800s or 1948, right? The state of Israel. So how do we talk about Jewish-Muslim relations after this trip, but also does this education and the awareness and the depth of what happened to Jews like Surya said beautifully, in terms of rhetoric, right? The hate against Jews, the building up of actually 2,000 years, if not more, 2024 years of hatred, and even before that. So we have, as some scholars have said, the longest hatred in the world. And there is indeed Islamophobia. I have experienced it, like Anila mentioned, her experiences. And how do we combat that, but in different ways where we can understand the differences and the similarities of this hate? So Anila, would you like to shed some light on Jewish-Muslim relations today?
Yes, Menaz. I want to go back and think about the generations that built Pakistan. My great grandparents, my parents, when they moved to Pakistan, I saw Pakistan being the most moderate country, the most tolerant country. And today, it leaves much to be desired. What happened? And I think about how those leaders viewed life, how they allowed discussion and debate, how they never closed the doors on diplomacy and dialogue. They also did not stop us from asking questions and saying, what happened during partition? The partition was so bloody. It was India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, all of these nations. Pakistan's been had wars with India and Bangladesh, but today we talk, right? Look at my Bangladeshi colleagues. They're like my sisters. Why? Because our great grandparents and parents did not tell us, don't talk to Hindus, they are bad people, don't talk to Indians, don't talk to Bangladeshis. We've had wars with them, and we will continue to live in that perpetual violence of hate, cycle of hate. We will live in that victimhood forever. No, they never did that. They always taught us that there's always a choice that we can make. And that choice should be sit down and talk peace, sit down and make peace. When, after the war with Bangladesh, I remember that my father, Bhutto, Prime Minister Bhutto at that time had sent my father to bear witness in Bangladesh. And he came back and he wrote a book, Blood and Tears. And that's exactly what he talked about. He bore witness to what had happened. It was hate. It was violence. It was, misgovernance. And we lost our neighbors. We lost Bangladesh. But do we today sit and say that we are going to kill and annihilate or take back Bangladesh? No, we were not taught to do that. I have an aunt, who's always looking to get her property back from Hyderabad in India. And it's been 92 years and she's been asking for it to come back. Is she going to get it back? No. And I feel sorry for such people who live in the past, do not learn from it, and do not move on and understand that there's always a choice. We all have a choice. We need to sit down and say, if we are to thrive as Muslims in the world, as Muslims in America, and to become the responsible leaders that our Prophet of Islam would be proud of, we need to put peace first, dialogue, diplomacy second, and only then we are going to be living the Sirat-e-Mustaqim. We are going to be doing the Hukukul Ibad. And that's my message to everybody. Everyone has a choice. Use that choice for peace.
Thank you, Anila, so much. I also am from Pakistan. So it's like this South Asian contingency here. And you know what? We represent the majority of Muslims, Asian Muslims. That's something that I think, non-Muslims need to understand is it's, Asians and then Africans and the Arabs are only 20% of the Muslim population. This is something I teach in my intro classes for Islam as well. So Farhana, we'd like to move to you and see, how do you think more directly about the question, this will improve Jewish-Muslim relations, or this kind of education, whether it's, teaching about Jewish history and the traditions and anti-Semitism, and then also teaching Jews about the pain of Muslims too, and what Anila just mentioned in terms of 1.2 million people being killed in the partition between India and Pakistan. The stories that my grandmother told my mother, that my mother tells me about, the kind of brutal attacks that went on. How do we deal with this trauma too, Farhana?
Oh, thank you, Minaz. Sorry, I was muted. I would like to start by saying we have to be more open to accepting others in our community who are different than us. Second of all, the fear of losing our values, our religion, our culture. We kind of tend to close ourselves among us. Living in a diverse society, the world is diverse. With right now, it's with the web, we are connected to everyone. So the more we open to accepting others as who they are, it could be the beginning of a lot of problems to be solved. And I would say, like Anila said, in Pakistan and India, Bangladesh war, 3 million Bangladeshis had died. 200 women were raped. And the numbers can be, nobody took down the numbers, so we are not for sure exactly, how many more or how many less. But at one point, what I like to say, growing up from my household, I was never told not to hate Pakistanis or anyone in that matter of fact. So I believe this foundation has to come from the home. Where the teaching needs to be, the children has to be taught at the young age that we have to accept who are our neighbors, who are our colleagues, who are our friends, although they are from different background, different religion. I would share that I have took down this note from one of the Holocaust museum by Benjamin Fondue. He has murdered in Auschwitz in 1944. Remember only that I was innocent, and just like you, moral of that day, I too had a face marked by rage, by joy and pity. Quite simply, I'm a human face. So if we go back to the roots of we are human first, and there are religion or authenticity, everything comes after. That could be the ground of building more understanding towards each other.
Thank you, Farhana, so much. Zebunisa, any thoughts on building better relations between Jews and Muslims?
Thank you, Mehnaz. As a part of multi-faith group, women group, I have been working with Anila a long time. We already made very good relations with our Jewish community people here in USA. We have been doing a lot of interfaith program, like, Shine a Light, then Interfaith Iftar, then we visit synagogue, and we are the first Muslim women group went to state of Israel for Abraham Accord. Then also after the October 7, we are the first one to went there. And we are very vocal about the violence against women happen on October 7. So we already make the relationship with Jewish community. So as a from freedom fighter family, my parents are survivor of 25th March in Bangladesh. That time also is Pakistan, with 4 minor child, and a lot of my cousin went to war. And also my family, they are the branded leader of 1971 war. So if I need to dislike someone, the atrocity happened in 1971 by Pakistan Army, we would dislike Pakistan. But instead of that, we make friends with them. Like, you know, when I came to USA, I see all the Pakistani wonderful people, you know, and my majority friends were in California, they're Pakistani. So you have to love, it's very easy. If you like them, if you make love, you know, smile, you know, share culture. What happened in the past, that was a mistake, you know, and we shouldn't hold on that. We should move on. Like we have already established the diplomacy with Pakistan. We play cricket. We wear their clothing. We love their clothes, music. So similarly, we didn't have any problem with Israel or any Jewish people. So whether we have a problem, but we have to move on, find a resolution to solve that problem by dialogue. Hate is, if you see the past in the back, you know, past history, hate is always the loser. Only love wins, truth is win. So obviously we have to make a lot of PR with a lot of events, you know, not only serious events, some fun event, you know, maybe, you know, cultural event, food festival, you know, music. So this is how we build the bonding, especially living in USA. This is a very much one of the, if you see the human history, this is a very diverse era we are going. You know, all kind of religion, ethnicity living here together. So we have to very much spoke about it, stand together about the peace, like, you know, peace, how to build the peace building, how, you know, and loving each other and embrace the, like this country embrace all the differences. So as an immigrant, we have to embrace also all the differences. Thank you, Mehnaz.
Thank you, Surya. We have a few minutes for questions as well. So if you want to answer the same question, is how do we better our relationships, or how do we use this kind of education, this kind of forum? As you've told me, this is going to be a series, right? Other Muslims that went on the trip will also be talking. I mean, an educational forum that, you know, is informing people that we have to acknowledge each other's suffering. No one suffering is greater than the other. It's not about numbers, it's about pain, right? And we all experience it very differently. So Surya, please.
Yes, quickly, Mehnaz, you know, after I came back from the trip, I asked you, Mehnaz, because you are an academic, you're a scholar on this topic, you know, genocide and Holocaust studies. So I asked you, can we have a program, Holocaust one-on-one, you know, where through the American Muslim Multi-Faith Empowerment Council that we could disseminate this curriculum in our mosques and in our community centers. And we have that vision still alive and well. Because I think only education can liberate us all. What we are saying is, we don't have to love everybody, but let us not hate someone. Because that becomes an all-time low. So an education such as this, and my friend Dan Pfefferman asks, says, did the Holocaust happen because there was no Israel? Or could the Holocaust have been avoided if there was an Israel? Did the Jews have a place to go to call themselves their own? I mean, today when you look at, sometimes I sit in my backyard and I see little birds coming together to build a little nest. I think everybody needs a home. How can we look at this whole problem in a different light? Look at the suffering of the people who have gone through this, so that nobody is immune from genocides. I come from Sri Lanka. We fought a 30-year-old war. In the final stages of the war, 40,000 people died and 120,000 people are still unaccounted for. It only takes a very punitive agenda of some political leaders or an agenda that is not human for this to happen to any one of us. We are all vulnerable. So I think it is a duty on every one of us. And we must walk away from this fallacy, Mehnaz, that where we can impose a single truth on a pluralistic world. We need education. We need to compare. Not one of us have a monopoly on the truth. Not one of us have a monopoly on what is the best. but we need to be in communication. That is what is lacking. And I want to end by saying this, that, God will finally judge us, not on the decisions. He will really judge us on the decisions we make, not those decisions that is imposed on us. So I call on the Muslim community, particularly, that is my constituency. We have to think large, we have to step up, we have to have compassion, we have to listen, and we have to learn so that none of us suffer in this world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Surya. I'm just asking for questions, and I think we got our first one. So the question is, I'm going to go to Anila first, and then we'll go through the questions. Like, we'll see how many we get. We have enough time for like 2 or 3. In the context of students raising voices for a ceasefire in Gaza, their voices are considered as anti-Semitism. What is the definition of anti-Semitism? How do we move from past painful memories, playing cricket, music, food, etc.? Are they enough sustainable? How can dialogue be done without the interests of the oppressor?
So first part of the question is, what is anti-Semitism, right?
Yes, and it's a very interesting question because it's a big controversy right now. There's a lot of different definitions going on, both what the U.S. government is taking on as well as what scholars consider it. But his question is really about how can students, raise their voice for Gaza without being seen as anti-Semitic?
Okay, so there's nothing wrong in raising your voice against Gaza, for Gaza.
No, for Gaza, yeah.
For Gaza. But why aren't you asking for peace for Gaza? Why are you saying Hamas, who are the terrorists, who have held the Gazans hostage, away from flourishing, away from peace, away from living like the Arabs in the UAE and Morocco and Saudi Arabia, flourishing economically? They have taken billions of dollars from the aid that the Arabs gave them for the past so many years. And they have built tunnels. They have amassed weapons. Who are Hamas? These students need to be educated about Hamas. Anti-Semitism is an age-old hatred that we all know. It existed 5,000 years ago. It still exists. But if you want to stand up for the Gazans, stand up against Hamas and ask for Hamas to be annihilated. Look, we've been doing conflict mediation for the past 15 years, taking students from American campuses to go and learn exactly that. How do you understand the conflict? Because it is very complicated. Do you not ask the question, why is Egypt not opening its border? Why is Jordan not opening its border for the brethren? Why is, Kuwait not calling them? Why is UAE not calling and standing up and saying, I will take? There's a reason. The reason is that Hamas they're evil terrorists. They want to control the entire world. Yes, it sounds like, I'm talking about like some world conspiracy. It is. That's who they are. And we have Hamas in America, and they call Muslim Brotherhood. How do we know? Because we have been maligned and attacked and hurt by them. We know who they are. We have worked in countering violent extremism. They shut us up. They don't want Islam to flourish. They want their version. They are like the ISIS. And so if you really want peace, if you want those in Gaza to be like my children, go to Berkeley and your children, then you're going to say, I'm going to give those kids books and not bombs. So why aren't these students saying, we want to go and help feed the people in Gaza? That's a constructive way to help the Gazans. We want to go and tell them to choose better leaders and help them understand what democracy is, what life is, and what Allah has said. It's so precious to have saved lives. And I have seen myself posters of children and Hamas in Ramallah, and Janine, they're asking for, give your child for jihad, 15,000 for an under 15 and 25,000. Life, oh my God, life is so precious. These children are so precious. Do not sell them. Do not give them. Allah wants us to feed them and bathe them and take care of them and make them beautiful human beings. Please don't do that to our children. I ask those young people, come with me to Gaza, come with me to Ramallah and Janine and see the truth, and then go and stand with Hamas. I want to stand with the Palestinians, and that is why I'm standing with Israel. Root out Hamas. That is my perspective.
Okay, thank you, Anila. So I want to ask a question about the word oppressor. How do we define the word oppressor is one of the questions that came in. And maybe Farhana, you can answer that question for us. Or I think maybe if that's not something you want to, I mean, and either with any three of you.
I think
Because we have
Soraya,
two more questions after that. Yeah, go ahead. Farhana? No?
I was thinking Soraya can take that question, Soraya.
I think
But
the
she's saying that
dictionary.
maybe she doesn't have the question, but maybe that should be defined.
The dictionary definition would be that any authority that uses its power unjustly to keep people under control, oppression. So that's how we would define oppression. Are the people in Gaza oppressed? I think so, because that is exactly why I was a card-carrying member for Palestinian cause. I still am, but I see the truth in a different light now. As long as there's Hamas, their agenda, their ethos is not peace related. So that is exactly why we take this stand to say that, as Anila said, how can we negotiate with the organization whose fundamental vision is the destruction and the murder of people? So that is exactly why. But do we stand for the Gazans? 110%. Because I even tell my Jewish friends, without freedom and dignity for the Palestinians, there cannot be security for the Jewish people. So we have to work together. We have to, you asked, how can we advocate for Gazans on campuses? When we were speaking at MIT, the Jewish students told us that the rabbi, the chaplain for the MSA had said there will be no talks with Zionist students. So this kind of rhetoric, this kind of building a wall is not going to help us. We live in the United States. These kids are attending the topmost universities. Basic is to invite 10 people who are Jewish, 10 people who are Palestinian, find a facilitator, of course, they'll kill each other. And then have a conversation, come out with some steps, write out these are the 10 steps and present it in a nice way, not call for the destruction of a country. That is something we can't support. We will never support.
Thank you so much, Surya. Another important question, I think this is something I ask myself all the time is, what are the larger advocacy Muslim groups, organizations in the United States? Like we know we have CARE, but there have been fundamental problems with CARE, as I think some of you may know. And then, what larger, more organized Muslim advocacy groups can we rely on in order to further our work of dialogue and peacemaking? And Anila and Zeba here and Farhana and Surya all have expressed who they are and what they're fighting for. And if you want to do some advocacy, you should join them. And it's about women, but men are also allowed to fight for women, right? I mean, this is not an exclusive club or anything. And I think that is there any light you can shed for someone who's wondering, well, how do I really get involved in talk to more Muslims or reach a larger network of Muslims? Is there any responses or any kind of ideas that you might have to help us through
You
this?
know, Menas, for a long time, we didn't realize we are the leaders we've been waiting for. Paul Kessler was murdered on the streets of Thousand Oaks, half an hour from where I live, for just carrying a Jewish flag. I wrote to so many Muslim leaders in Southern California, please condemn this, because the Jewish people have stood with us after 9/11. But I didn't see any condemnation. And then I realized that we are the leaders we've been waiting for. So right now, I think advancing this level of peacemaking, collaboration, and challenging the division that is taking place on our colleges, campuses, is one of the leaders I'm proud to work for is the American Muslim Multi-Faith Empowerment Council. We are calling for Muslims to join us. We are calling for Muslims to tell us, how can we show up better for the Palestinians if we are falling short? Tell us, we are there, because for us, finally, peace is that everybody has a piece of the puzzle, because there cannot be peace when you subjugate or disenfranchise or disregard somebody else's aspirations. So we invite everybody to join us, and we will mobilize, and we are organizing, and we are working on this. So join us. Thank you.
May I say something?
Yes.
Menaz, I want to say something about you know, the fact that we are really in dire need of Muslim leadership in America, responsible Muslim leadership, which is why we as mothers are here. Like, we have families. We have left our families and said we need to band together so that we can have a voice. There are organizations, in Muslim organizations, majority organizations, that have silenced us, abused us. They have discriminated against us. Why? Because we have a different point of view. It's time for Muslim women to get out there and say, why don't we have, you know, seats on the Shura Council? Why aren't we able to talk about our religion and be the leaders? Why are you afraid to include us when we are the mothers? You know, the Prophet of Islam, peace be upon him, his wife hired him. So don't tell us we can't be leaders. And we are all educated. We can do ijtihad. We can do interpretation. We can read the Quran. We can read the Bible. We can read everything because the Quran says, Ikra. We can read. And yet you don't treat us equally. You tell us, go sit in the kitchen because that's where you belong. Sister, go sit in the kitchen. No, that's not what my prophet did. And that's not what you're doing to us. You need to let us lead. And you need to allow us to speak, even if we are not echoing your point of view. We have a different point of view that is going to build peace eventually. And yes, we are hurt by what happened to Hamas, you know, to the women in Israel. Their body parts were cut by Hamas, who claimed to be Muslims. They had swords and they said, Allahu Akbar. I am outraged that my Quranic holiest word, Allahu Akbar, was used to do that. When I told the imams who were here to ask me to call for a ceasefire, I said, brother, I'm a Pakistani. If I am living in the north of Pakistan and the Taliban or somebody comes and violates me and your sisters in their home, gang rapes them, are you going to sit quietly? I hope not, because the woman is the honor of a nation. And we know about honor. We're Muslims. And yet we refuse to acknowledge the honor of the Jewish woman, of the Israeli woman, because she is Yahudi. I think that is so, you know, that whole moral compass needs to be recalibrated in the Muslim world. What are we doing? Are we teaching our children that it's okay for Israeli women to be raped because they're Jewish, and it's not okay for anybody else? Then Mehnaz, we didn't say anything about the Rohingya women either. We're not saying anything about the Uyghur women. So what can I say? I mean, where our outrage is so selected and targeted towards Israel that don't tell me this is not anti-Semitism. It is pure anti-Semitism, what we're seeing on campuses and globally in the left-wing media, in whatever, academia.
Okay, we're kind of out of time, and I don't see any other questions. I don't think I missed anything, but I just wanted to end on more of a positive note if we can, because I think we need some positive reinforcement to move in our lives, right? To move forward. And one of the things I want to leave you thinking about is that I work with both Jews and Muslims, and of course Christians, because I'm at a Catholic school. But the people I've met that have done this kind of work and this kind of advocacy are worth waking up for every single morning. Those that put their, they just get out, and there are these nonprofit people, these educators, the people who go out in the fields that are really, really making a difference in a way that gives me hope every morning. And the four of you are the light to the world, inshallah. And I want to say, as a Muslim, I'm very proud to have moderated this panel. And I hope that we will continue this series and that you will tell other people about the work that all of these wonderful women are doing and spread the word for a larger crowd, inshallah. Thank you, and peace be upon you.
Thank you, Manaz.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Inshallah.